Welcome to The Growth Shift, the podcast where we unlock the psychological and strategic blueprints of predictable growth. If you've built a successful business, you know the truth. Your expertise is high value, but your time is finite. The question is, how do you sustain that success without sacrificing your most valuable asset? We believe that the next level of success requires a strategic pivot, a fundamental shift that moves beyond the old ways. In every episode, we dive into the critical turning points of industry leaders and uncover how they're leveraging AI not as a shortcut, but as the strategic force for their next growth shift. Today, we dive in with a leader who is defining the future of their industry. This episode is brought to you by Valentix, your strategic growth partner. At Valentix, we believe that trust and authentic relationships are the only true currency in high-value business. We challenge the status quo by building an AI-powered client acquisition engine that enhances your human connection, helping you move beyond the slow growth of referrals. Our AI-powered systems eliminate the grind, allowing you to break through the noise, automate tasks, and free up your time to focus on transformative client impact. If you're ready to build a predictable growth engine, learn more at valentix.io. Now let's dive into today's episode. Today on The Growth Shift, we're joined by Jonathan Banks, the founder of Next. Jonathan's career is a fascinating journey rooted in technology and human-centered design. Starting with disassembling telephones as a child and founding his first technical support company before high school. After building the customer experience practice at the Federal Reserve, Jonathan launched Next to help organizations understand what people want for their better tomorrow and create products and services to get them there. His insights into behavioral science, technology entrepreneurship, and the power of small changes to impact a great number of people offer a powerful blueprint for leaders navigating organizational transformation. Jonathan, welcome to The Growth Shift.
David, it's so good to be here and good to see you again. How are you?
Doing well. Excited to have you on the show today. You've got quite the interesting and dynamic journey starting at a young age. Taking apart telephones out of curiosity and finding a love for technology. Tell us a little bit about that foundational journey, where it started, and some of those things that you learned along the way that led to the position you're in now.
Well, I guess I was a nuisance to my parents' garbage cans, going through the old junk and pulling things out and toying around with them, plugging them in, calling neighbors and strangers with partially working phone calls and things like that. So, that curiosity and that, gravitation towards technology is something that has always been just interesting to me. And all through my career, continue to be curious, continue to think about what people want to see for their better tomorrow and find ways to have products and services that get them there. So this is what drives me every day. And it seems to be something I can't shake all my life. Maybe I'll go to something a little bit more subtle or subdued in the future. But I seem to be on this track for a long time now.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So from digging out old technology out of the garbage can, taking it apart, or maybe digging it out and putting it in the garbage can when you were done with it if it couldn't be fixed. I mean, after high school, you ended up, a little while after high school, we could say, you ended up building the customer experience practice at the Federal Reserve. I mean, with a love for technology, how did you find yourself there? And, how did you actually come to that of taking charge and building out that practice for the Federal Reserve? Tell us a little bit more about that timeline.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting history, interesting story. There's so much for me to continue to tap into from that experience and really just the honor of serving there and with the wonderful people in that organization. As I worked in that organization, the experience provided a lot of value because it's one of the most complex organizations they can actually work in. There's 12 different reserve banks, all with their own organization structure and hierarchy, of course, nested within the federal government and providing an important congressional mandated function there too. And so we had all of the different power dynamics to deal with. And from a technology standpoint, I was a person who worked with all of the reserve banks and with the central technology organization. And so one of the things that we had to figure out was how to provide products that met our customers' needs while balancing all of the different power dynamics of the technology groups that were involved in producing those products. And some of these products that we produced, we had to produce because they were, mandated. This is part of the Fed's goal of balancing unemployment and inflation, and we had to produce those products. So there's a lot of different demands to balance. And so where the customer experience came in was, how do we get everyone to align and produce their best work? How do we get everyone to align and reduce inefficiencies and make sure that we're prioritizing things according to what is most valuable as opposed to the constraints of our hierarchy and our organization? And so the customer was the key. Who is the customer? They're the one who ultimately decides the value of the product or service we create. And so that's where we need to focus as a group. And it doesn't matter if you're in Kansas City or New York or Minneapolis or Atlanta or wherever you're working out of. We need to understand who that customer is and then align our products and services to create a better tomorrow for them.
Sounds like you were operating and, of course, working for the Federal Reserve, working within a lot of regulation and red tape, we could call it. I'm sure you felt almost restrained at times. You were mentioning, the power dynamics of these other technology software solutions companies that you had to work with to make sure that you were actually able to deliver the outcome that you wanted to. Through working in what I assume is a very rigid environment, it doesn't seem like there would be a ton of room for flexibility, for creativity. Find your own creative element to fit with everything else, within all the structures, and ultimately find a way to better serve the end customer.
I love that question about the creative element amongst, a lot of different constraints. But that's also the beautiful part about being creative, is a lot of times we're most creative when there are constraints involved. And I think that's what all of us were forced to do while I was there, and why the customer experience became such an important and really liberating focal point for technologists in the organization. It's because it's a pathway towards some clarity. It's a path towards saying, is what we're doing actually making a difference for the people who are serving? And if not, how might we change our process or the outcomes of our process to be more aligned with what that customer needs for their better tomorrow? And so it did take a lot of work. It took, building voice of the customer. It took looking at the project management and the product management practice that was already in play and doing some revisions there. And it took a lot of socialization and stakeholder management and building relationships across the organization and across the country. So there were a lot of constraints. There continue to be, as I understand there, but also those constraints are necessary for the institution as it is. And those constraints, in my view, actually help to fuel creativity and innovation when people look at them with the right approach.
I love that. I love what you said there, right? Because operating without constraints, some people might say that you need freedom from constraints to be creative. But at the same time, having those constraints and having more of a necessity to innovate and find change also leads to a different path of creativity, right? Because instead of having a completely blank sheet and being able to go in any direction, which can lead to confusion, analysis paralysis, right? If you know exactly where it is you can play, then you have the freedom to figure out how it is you can play perfectly within those restraints.
You just made me kind of go back to this initial story about the telephone. When you're 4 years old, you might have a screwdriver, you have limited knowledge of how this works, it plugs in there. The curiosity that you have about what you can do with those limited items, this is your world that you live in, right? This is the world that you can create from. And so, when you're in a professional situation and you have a world that's so constrained, you can still tap into that curiosity and come out with something really wonderful and powerful. But I see a good connection there, a good parallel between those constraints of, the doesn't matter where you are in your life or your career, finding that curiosity amongst the constraints is something that you can do and something that's very powerful.
And curiosity amongst the constraints, I'm sure, led to some pretty profound realizations, lessons. We call them growth shifts, through your time at the Federal Reserve, or maybe it came before or after. What was that most impactful growth shift moment that you had that just changed how it is you think about business today?
I think simpler is better. I think that a lot of times a very revolutionary or impactful change isn't complicated or isn't far away. I think when there's a good idea that's going to help people, it will get traction if you connect that idea to other people who are vested in the result. And so I like to bring this example up all the time because it continues to play out in my life and in everything I do. But, going back to when I was at the Fed, I just noticed through my experience that we were spending a lot of time as all the employees at the Fed going back and forth to the cafeteria to get water, right? And for an adult who's supposed to drink a couple liters of water every day, sipping from a drinking fountain doesn't quite do the trick. So you probably noticed that a lot of people carry water bottles around their office and fill them up and bring them back to their desk and they drink water all day. Well, this was my experience and I saw others doing it too. And I just noticed that we were spending a lot of time between our desks and the cafeteria walking back and forth to fill up water bottles. And I thought, what if we could use a drinking fountain to fill up our water bottle, And I think everybody's tried to do that where they tip it at an angle and spill water all over the place because you just can't get it quite full, but you want to get it full so you don't have to come back so often. You go through this. And I just said, what if we put water bottle fillers on these drinking fountains, right? I just said that and thought it. And it's just about people understanding the idea and seeing the value of it because I simply submitted a request to our maintenance team. Like it was like a kind of like a tell us what you want Dropbox type of thing. How can we do our job better? And I said, hey, what if we put some bottle fillers on these drinking fountains? And I thought it would go nowhere, but I got a response saying, hey, we looked into this and it's very cheap to do. And we can put this on all the drinking fountains here. And so within a couple of weeks, there was fillers on all the drinking fountains in the Minneapolis Fed. And as I traveled throughout the system, this exact same model of filler started popping up on drinking fountains all throughout the system. So we, as an organization, by doing this, we ended up saving our employees a ton of time going back and forth to cafeterias and filling up their water bottles. And also it's a health benefit, right? For people to be better hydrated while they're at their desks. Just a small idea. I didn't even have power to make it happen, right? Just mentioned it to the maintenance crew and the facilities crew. And they took it the rest of the way. But it's just such a small thing that has such a great impact. And I think if you have a small change that can have a great impact and you have relationships with the people who can help you get it done, anything is possible. And it's possible to change people's lives or even an entire institution.
Isn't it incredible how some of the smallest changes can have some of the biggest impacts, right? Something so seemingly obvious, but overlooked by so many people in a situation such as the one that you shared. Having a small change, putting on water bottle filling attachments at water stations, not only saving time and of course saving money for the Fed, but also increasing the quality of life of all of the employees there as well, right? I mean, it makes you think and wonder, how can these small things be so easily overlooked and sometimes for so long as well?
It does make you wonder that. And sometimes you just need to ask the question and ask around a little bit more before letting the thought die in your head. Be bold, be curious, be connected with people, be connected to what people want for their better tomorrow, and take a little bit of action on that and see where it goes.
Couldn't agree more. And Jonathan, after your time at the Federal Reserve, with the lessons that you learned there, with the passion that you have for helping people change their lives now, what is it that caused that shift to move to your own business? And tell us a little bit more about Next today, what it is you do with your clients and how you help them really drive outcomes.
Sure. Yeah. Well, obviously I was quite invigorated about the customer experience, always into technology. And so I decided, along with a few business partners, to start a company called Next. And actually, if you read how we spelled it, CX is in the middle of Next. We started on the premise of customer experiences in the center of everything we do. And nowadays, we're still working with technology and we're still working on customer experience, and we're working to change the world's behavior to create our best world.
Create our best world. So what does that mean when you're working with clients? How do you actually help companies and organizations create that best world through what they do and what you do with them?
Yeah, great question, because it sounds kind of ambitious, right? To create our best world. Maybe it sounds like it might be a fantasy or something that, we say, but we don't do. But the path to creating our best world continues to be the same as what I discovered at the Fed. We need to understand what people want for their better tomorrow. I can't remember the last time I woke up and I said, oh, yesterday was great. I hope today's worse. Nobody says that. Nobody thinks that way. Everybody wants one day to be better than the next, at least the same, but better than the one day to be better than the last day, right? That's what people want in their lives. And when a company can figure out how their product and service accomplishes that, that's creating our best world, right? And this again follows the same philosophy that I developed while I was at the same philosophy I developed while I was at the Federal Reserve, which is that this alignment towards the customer's better tomorrow is very powerful for organizations trying to figure out what to do next.
It's these small incremental changes day in and day out, working for a better tomorrow each and every day that, maybe small but powerful, small and powerful, right? Or perhaps large and powerful as well. The
Mhm.
shift that you saw and the change that you initiated, let's say at the Federal Reserve, I'm sure that's just the starting point for what it is that you bring in and you help your clients with. Can you give us a little bit more about the practical hands-on when Next is working with clients? Can you walk us through what the day-to-day looks like and how it is that you're actually helping companies create better change for their own organization as well as for their customers and clients?
Yeah, I appreciate that question because this is the goal of every consulting company is to work alongside their client. We call them partners at Next, partners in creating our best world. But to work with them and collaborate with them to make them more effective out of that partnership and help them achieve their mission in a more efficient, cost-effective, and hopefully revolutionary or futuristic way, right? To give them a competitive advantage and in turn give their customers a better product or service. So when we're thinking about this idea of creating our best world with our partners, we always look at it from a data plus human perspective.
Mhm.
Right. And it's not data or humans, it's data and humans put together. We call that the data driven human advantage. And that's something that we've always put forward at Next and we continue to. Right now, what we observed in the market is that all organizations are under the pressure to deliver results fast, right? And so getting to that clarity about what we should deliver is super important. Now, we can sit back and we can go through a project plan and we can create do some program management to develop a new product. All of these sorts of things are, embedded in well practice in organizations. What we like to do at Next is to focus on behaviors in the organization. We like to think about how are people operating in the organization without a project, without an organizational change management plan. How are these people showing up? And are they showing up in alignment with the mission of the organization and alignment with the customer's needs? And so we use this data and human approach to figure that out, starting with assessing the organization to see how many people are aligned with the mission, vision, values of the organization and test the alignment with the people that the organization is serving. And then from that assessment, it gives us the whole organization a lot of clarity around any type of misalignment that exists and the alignment that exists too. And that's where we get down to focusing on behaviors. The way that people are showing up every day, the way that they're behaving, the type of habits that they use, are those contributing and aligned with what the organization is doing to serve the customer. And so that's how we operate within organizations. We deliver our service through what you'll see as typical consulting, but we also have a technology product. We have a technology product called the Action Impact and Measurement System, or AIMS for short. And this is a place where people in the organization will go in and practice new habits and behaviors. They'll receive all the supports they need, whether it's documentation, exercises, questions, things of that nature to help them support that habit. But we can actually see the habits that people are practicing on a daily basis in this organization through the action impact and measurement system. And because we did that assessment, we can make sure all of those behaviors are aligned to growth areas of the organization. And we can measure those. We can actually measure how people are practicing the habits and how it's helping the organization grow from an objective standpoint.
So habits alignment, behaviors alignment. I'm sure this ties into values alignment as well. Having people actually understand how it is that their behaviors impact their values, impact the company direction, and all of these things at the same time. Of course, this can drive a pretty profound impact for companies conceptually, right? Everyone understands that. Jonathan, can you share a story or an example with us of, when Next came in, what were those behaviors that were perhaps misaligned? How did you implement your systems? And, what did you really do through your consulting to help the organization find that realignment, find the right habits that needed to be performed? And by making these changes, what actually occurred?
So, kind of, what does it matter, right? Yeah, it's what does your process matter? What do these changes matter? Like, why even do any of this? I think the first thing to understand is that organizations need objective goals. And when the objective goals become obscured further down throughout the hierarchy, whether it's a flat organization or not, when people don't understand what those objective goals are, then there's a lot of questions that come up and a lot of misalignment that comes up. And so anything that we do as far as behavior change and habit formation through the action impact and measurement system, those have to be tied to objective results in the organization, right? We got to get everybody thinking and working in the same direction. David, 90% of what we do every day is based on our habits. We're only thinking about 10% of the things that we do every day. So when you look at it from that standpoint, we can only be so successful through project planning, et cetera, because really what's fueling the success of the organization is what people are already showing up and doing without being instructed from a project plan, et cetera. So that's why the habits are so important. When we sit down with an organization and we partner with them to change habits, we typically see a range of 17 to 22% growth in the change of their habit. So if they were showing up every day and checking their email before talking to someone in the office, right? We usually will see at least a 20% reversal in that behavior where they will say, now when I show up to the office, I am going to talk with my colleagues. I'm going to socialize. I'm going to, build the culture of this organization before I get so siloed and focused into my computer screen that I forget that I'm a human amongst many others in an organization that's here to serve humans.
I love that connection of culture, right? Getting people away from the technology and more, at least in some ways, and more involved with the people, right? Building those relationships, building the culture within, finding that alignment. Because if you don't have cohesion within a company, within an organization, those objective goals are going to be a lot harder to hit. People probably all feel like many times they might feel like they're moving in different directions. I really love what you said about habits. Habits can make or break you at the end of the day. As you said, only perhaps about 10% of what we do is actual active thinking and action, right? Everything else is habits, the habits that we have formed. They can make us or they can break us. So, those are some pretty compelling metrics you shared, right? The 17 to 22%, I think you said, reduction or increase in
Change.
enhancement in habits are outcomes
Mhm.
through the habits that you help change. Wow.
Yeah, David.
Jonathan.
I just add one more point onto that too, is that this cohesion that we talk about, right? There's so much energy put it into achieving cohesion through thinking, right? Through learning, through teaching, through going to workshops, right? And you can learn something, you can teach something, but if it doesn't become a habit, then it usually goes on the shelf. Or it can turn into something where somebody knows better, but they're afraid to bring it forward because they don't practice doing the better thing, right? And so that's where we want to take anything that's needed to propel this organization forward in alignment with their objectives and try to turn it into a habit. And so we talked about a habit dealing with employee engagement and cohesion in the organization. But if there is an objective that you're trying to reach through behavioral science, we can create a habit to support.
What you're doing is, of course, quite profound, right? You're working with people to help them better change their habits for the better, for that better tomorrow for themselves, for the organization, for the customers at the end of the day as well. I'd love to hear a little bit about, where it is Next is finding success today. And what I mean is a lot of consultants and consulting companies, let's say use Next for an example, have an incredible way of driving profound change and creating incredible impact for their clients. In today's world, it's getting more and more difficult to attract and secure the right type of clients, especially for consultants who do things differently, right? Value is often misconstrued or misconceived by the people who might be trying to connect with and helping. With what it is that you're doing at Next, where are you finding the most success for attracting clients who you can have this sort of impact with when I would say broadly, probably a lot of companies look at what you do and say, we don't need to change our habits. We just need to change our bottom line, top line, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's an interesting example that you brought up. We don't need to change our habits. We just need to change our bottom line. But then you ask, how come our bottom line didn't change? Well, we didn't do X, Y, and Z. Well, why didn't X, Y, and Z happen? Well, because, these other things that were supposed to happen, these other tasks or milestones or whatever weren't reached. Well, how come we didn't reach those? Well, people are showing up every day and they don't have cohesion, or they're not aligned, or there's confusion, or we don't have good communication practices, or whatever it might be, right? And that's all habit driven.
Mm.
That's what it is at the bottom of the day, at the end of the day. So if we don't have habits in place, we don't have a foundation for success. And organizations need to understand that. When we go out in the market as a consulting company, and us amongst all the consulting companies out there, the thing that we have to do is stay true to who we are, right? And stay true to our message, stay true to our process, and keep evolving at the same time. We have to keep evolving and using new technology. A lot of folks are, really excited about AI and figuring out how to adopt that in the organization. The first video that we ever made at Next, promotional video, talked about how we're using AI to change the world. And that has always been a part of the work that we do at Next, because like I said, it's a pairing of humans and technology together to create our best world. And so I think, being a consultant right now and having a consulting organization like Next, you got to stay true to who you are, stay true to your values, but keep on evolving, keep on being curious, keep on being competitive, right? Think about products and services that you can develop yourself that can help your organization to move forward. Think about the best products and services that are on the market that can help your organization move forward. And of course, keep the customer at the center of everything.
I love that, right? Just that alignment with your mission and what you're doing. I mean, for consultants out there, right? As soon as you start getting distracted and trying to help everyone who's out there, your results are going to start getting watered down, right? And if you can't drive incredible results with the people that you have because you're playing or you're going outside of your own lane, let's say, perhaps you're not staying laser focused on the core of who you are, the mission you have, and the outcome you want to drive, how you want to drive it, and who you want to do that with, then you can pretty quickly get sidetracked, right? Generalists
Mm-hmm.
are a thing. There are generalist consultants out there who are absolutely great, but even with generalists, right, you need to have a laser focused precision on your messaging, the value you drive, and who you're really going to help at the end of the day, especially when it comes to client acquisition, right? People, prospective clients, want to fully understand exactly how it is you're going to help them, and they want to feel like you have the answers for them and their needs. They don't care about anyone else. I love what you guys are doing, Jonathan, with just staying focused on your mission, your values, and exactly what it is that you really deliver ultimately. Jonathan,
Yeah.
this situation or that approach, as important and valuable as it is, it can often lead to a pretty confounding and frustrating position for consultants. And what I mean is that, the results you drive are profound. Maybe not you at Next, but in general, the results you can drive are profound, and that leads to incredible client results, great referrals, great presence, great authority. But it can be difficult to break out of referral reliance, let's say, right? Staying focused on what you do, yes, evolving, yes, using new technologies, but breaking out there into the broader market for greater opportunities can become challenging. When you're looking at the general state of the markets and the challenges that are most prevalent for consultants who are pursuing client acquisition very intentionally, what do you see being some of the biggest challenges of maybe breaking out of referral reliance or breaking into new segments, or connecting with new
Mm.
clients who you can help, but they might not just understand the real value of what you do?
I think consultants suffer from not honoring sales as a profession. You
Mm.
know, there's maybe some arguments about the oldest professions that still exist today, but sales is definitely one of them. And you got to believe in what you're doing. And you have to know about your customer. You have to know about your potential partner. You have to know how what you're doing is going to make their day tomorrow better than their day was today, right? You got to be confident in it and position that as your courage, right? This is why we're going to have this conversation. This is why when you say no, it's probably not you saying no. It's probably because you just don't see the value of what I'm providing so far. And I've got to do a better job of explaining that, because I have total confidence that when we work together, you're going to produce better results for your customer than you would otherwise. So I think, getting away from the referrals is really just endearing sales. It's something that you have to do. And if you're not doing it, you'll stay in the referral loop for as long as you exist. And a lot of consultants do that when they have perfectly happy consulting lives too. So if you don't want to go to sales and you want to do referrals, just do great work and keep doing it. That's fine too. But others, like you're saying, who are trying to kind of cross this bridge, you got to lean into sales. You just have to lean into it. You got to love it, honor it as a profession, and figure out how to do it in the right way for your organization.
Hmm.
Let's get on to those other parts of the question too, David, if you still have them.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're talking about referrals, right? Because a lot of consultants are stuck there. But that next gap is, for the consultants who want to move from referrals into a more targeted client acquisition approach, one that they have a little bit more control over. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges, or what are the challenges that you're observing at Next when it comes to attracting clients in a world that is really oversaturated with perhaps less qualified competitors, with newer players in the market, with the saturation that we're facing right now? What are the biggest challenges you're observing that need to be overcome? And what would your approach be for really tackling those challenges today?
Yeah, I mean, I think you tapped into one of them, which is differentiation of your organization versus others, right? No one wants to hire just another consultant. Consultants actually have a pretty bad reputation. If you haven't heard, if you haven't seen the movie Office Space, you probably can go watch that and see the type of reputation that still prevails around consultants. But at the same time, a lot of organizations rely heavily on consulting. And so finding the match with that organization at the right time when they have a need for you and you provide something that can help them is important. But you don't just show up one day and say, "Oh, hey, like I got a solution that's going to fix everything you're worried about." Right? Going to help you meet your objectives and make your customers happy. You haven't met me, but here it is. Look, don't you love it? Like that doesn't work. If you're a consultant, you're good at talking to people. If you're a consultant, you're good at solving problems. And you have to be talking to people and solving problems before you're doing business with the company, right? In a way that makes sense for everyone. You have to be an asset to that organization. You have to be an asset to that stakeholder. Um, for the entire existence of your relationship and continue to be there. Because if they don't have a need for you right now, you'll recognize that too. But if you provide something of value, that need will surface eventually, and then you'll be in a position to actually be there for that business. So it's important to be consulting all the time, right? Not just when you have a contract in place, but to always be available and to be a partner, whether there's a contract in place or not.
Yeah, and to highlight the most important thing I think you said there, you need to be talking to people and solving problems before you're working with somebody, right? You need to be providing value, especially in today's world, especially for differentiation. People need to see that, it's a cliche, but that they want to know that you care before they care what
Mm,
you know at the end of the day, right? They want to see that you're invested, you care about them, you have something that can benefit them. But getting in front of people for conversations is the most valuable thing, especially in an AI driven world, right? Technology is out there.
mm,
Technology is starting to replace or impact a lot of human interaction. So the sooner you can get in front of people for value driven conversations, the better off you are for client acquisition
mm.
today. Jonathan, we're talking about
Absolutely.
technology. You mentioned a few minutes ago that, the first video promotion that you guys put out at Next was talking about how you're going to change the world with AI. Please tell us a little bit more about where AI then does start to come into play for you at Next and how you're thinking about it as part of your next growth strategy.
Interesting question. Interesting history on that too. That video is great. Blockchain and AI are changing the world, right? And uh, the laser focus that you talked about too is important, right? Because those are just huge fields of technology that are expanding and growing faster than anyone can fathom, right? Now we've kind of left it up to technology to create itself. So how do you keep up with that, right? An expectation that I have of the team at Next and kind of anybody that I partner with too is that we're using technology to do our work better, right? It's that, again, the data driven human advantage. It's not just humans, it's not just technology, it's humans and technology. So if there's a technology that you can use that can make you more efficient or produce better results, that's great. If there's a technology that you can use to provide a better product or service to your partners, that's even better, right? If you can produce value using AI, then you should try to do that and try to do it in a safe, secure, and responsible way. So this is really what everyone at Next is expected to do, and something that everyone does do is use the right technology for the job that they have. And then, of course, we build as an organization our own proficiency collectively around these technologies as well. This is the way that we are really employing AI. It's not just for creating documents or doing analysis or anything like that, but also thinking about apps that we can create that are going to be beneficial for our partners, or helping them think through ideas for apps that will be beneficial for their customers, and helping them take on behaviors that make them more adept to using artificial intelligence for a productive outcome in their organization. It's fully embedded in our thought process, our work, everything we produce here. And it will continue to be, it always has. It's more easy now with these chat interfaces over the AI, so it's a lot more accessible for people as well. And we're taking full advantage on everything.
Now, Jonathan, humans are at the center of business, and you're using AI to add value and to integrate it into every aspect of what you do to enhance that value, right? You believe that businesses are living organisms, something we spoke about the first time we connected. From your
Absolutely.
perspective, as someone who sees organizations as living organisms responding to stimuli, right? What are the biggest risks then that you see for businesses integrating AI technology into that organism?
That's such a great question. Especially, I love that you brought up this environmental stimuli, right? Because that AI is definitely a powerful stimuli in the environment right now. Also, an asset to be used in the environment too. One of the things that I think folks really need to pay attention to is when their habits and their behaviors that they're using are no longer helpful for them. As a living organism, these companies don't have millions of years of evolution to figure out how they survive. We have to do that more quickly. So if we find a behavior or habit that exists in the organization that is counterproductive to thriving in the environment that we find ourselves in right now, we have to recognize that and find a way to change it so we can be more prosperous in the environment that we're in. And that goes back to why we focus on behaviors, right? If we continue to do 90% of the things we do the same way when the environment around us is changing second by second, that's not a recipe for thriving. That's a recipe for going out of business. And so that's why the behavior change and the habit change approach is even more important now that technology is rapidly changing the environment organizations find themselves in. And again, technology is changing technology, right? So it's not even people who are deciding that we need to move forward. Now we're at a position where technology is telling the environment and the world, you need to move forward with us, or we're going to leave you behind, right? And as far as I can tell, there's not one plug that we can take out of the wall to stop this thing from proceeding forward. In fact, it seems like from the expansion of energy production and data centers, there's just more things getting plugged in. So our ability to change our habits and behaviors is absolutely crucial to thriving in this environment.
Jonathan, your story covers technology entrepreneurship, human-centered design, and the power of understanding people's needs. For the founders and the growth-minded listeners who are navigating their own growth shift, what's the single most important piece of advice that you would leave them with about staying relevant, understanding their market, and making intentional decisions for long-term success?
Continuing to center yourself on what's most important to you. Continuing to have clarity in your own personal leadership mission, your own reason for existing on this planet, in this universe, and finding power through that. You'll go through different phases of your journey. You'll go through different phases of your life, and be comfortable with when things shift and change, and what is important becomes more important. What's in focus goes out of focus. Be comfortable with that and understand when it's happening, and keep tapping in to the energy that you get from that, the creativity that you get from that, the innocence that you get from that. And lean in to your passion, lean in to your curiosity, lean into your innocence, share it with the world, and keep working to make the world a better place.
Jonathan, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your story with the audience today. For anyone listening
It's great.
who would like to learn more about Next, or might even like to just continue the conversation, what would be the best way to find you?
ncxt.co. is the website. You can see all of our products and services there, and you can get directly in contact with us through a virtual coffee if you'd like to.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us on the Growth Shift today.
David, it's been great. I appreciate being here. I hope we can do this again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Another powerful conversation on the Growth Shift. If you, like our guests, are ready to turn your expertise into a predictable, scalable growth engine, one that eliminates the grind of prospecting and enhances your high-value relationships, then it's time to connect with Valentix. We are not a marketing agency. We are your strategic growth partner, building intelligent systems that ensure your client acquisition is predictable, not dependent on chance. To see how our AI-powered frameworks can free up your time and fill your calendar with decision makers, visit valentix.io. Thank you for joining us on the Growth Shift. We'll see you next time.